those of you who don't know me, my name is Steve Scavasso, and I am the founder and artistic director of the SAS Performing Arts Company. And I am thrilled and honored to welcome everybody to our first Diva Chat Talk. I was going to call it Diva Dish, but I said, no, I'm not going to do that.
Oh, no.
This is really exciting for me. In one way or the other, I have had the pleasure of hearing these two wonderful artists. I heard Luana DeVol at the Met when she was there doing Ortrude, and I had the distinct pleasure of actually standing next to Tichina, and when we both did our first Messiah together.
Oh, yeah.
So I know how these artists and how great they are. So before I go into having each one talk about a little bit about their history and their background, I just want to introduce you, our audience, both vocally and dramatically, to our Valkyrie sisters. But I'm going to start with Luana. If you would just give us a brief history of your beginnings and and how you made your career.
Well, I came to it rather late. I came from a simple family background, although there was always music, mostly to do with the church. We sang in church choir. Very often we were the only church choirs in our little church. And yeah, so I studied there. Somebody said, your daughter has a lovely voice. She might want to take voice lessons, which I did. And then I ended up singing for the San Francisco Opera Chorus in audition, and I was, too much to my surprise, I was taken in. I was the youngest member there for a couple of years. But that was basically my young artist program, was being in the opera chorus and standing behind the stars and watching Joan Sutherland and wonderful, wonderful singers of the time. And then I went away from music for a little while and came back to it. I married, I had a child, but I was always singing with small groups here and there. And the voice just kept growing. And finally, I found myself being the only amateur singing with 3 professionals with a group called the Master Chorale in San Mateo. And so I thought maybe I should rethink what I'm doing. Had no thought at all of becoming a professional singer until one day I was at the San Francisco Opera with Tannhäuser, and I can't remember who the soprano was, but came out and sang Dich teure Halle, and I thought, I think I can sing pretty well. I think I can sing about what she's doing. And not knowing all of the history that you take to become an opera singer. But I went on an audition tour, and eventually I was taken up by the Aachen Theater, making a big broad jump. And that's where I actually got my professional opera feet on the ground. And yeah, it just went from there. I was very well prepared because I was already a bit older. My son was already grown. And it was an unusual, there were a lot of kitty cats talking, isn't it a little too late for Luana to begin? And so, I fooled them. But with a dramatic voice, you know, that's just about what you have to do. You have to hide for a while until your voice develops. And so I started right away in the full Jugendlich Dramatisch, the lyric dramatic repertoire, and I guested my first year in Germany, and it never looked back. It just went from there, and I was very lucky. Occasionally it slowed down. I called my son and I said, well, looks like I'm coming home. I don't have any engagements. And then the phone would ring and off I'd go again. And so until I would say one of the pinnacles of the career was singing with Tichina in that Goetterdaemmerung. It was quite a production, and it was, I got Opera Singer of the Year. That was very, very sweet. And Opera House of the Year, Opera Chorus of the Year, Opera Conductor of the Year, Opera Director of the Year. It just went on. It just kept going. And it was such a special, I think Tichina. And Tichina, Tichina is the bravest opera singer I know. We'll get to that, Steve, I know. But when we'll find out what I mean when she gets a chance to describe what her...
No, we're gonna actually show it.
Yeah.
Can actually show it. Yes, it's called. We putting it under the topic of opera singing can be hazardous to your health. So, but you also, I mean, we'll talk a little bit. You've told me you've had a couple of little things happen to you too on stage.
Oh, well, we were about to do a revival of Goetterdaemmerung, and I ran off the podium that we were on and broke my ankle. Luckily, there was an orthopedic surgeon, so an opera fan, and he's the one who operated on my leg and took great care and got me up on my feet again. And yeah, I forget now what else I told you, Steve. You know, sometimes
that was about it. That you told me.
Yeah,
but
other things are more humorous. But that was the thing. Yeah.
Tichina, why don't you? I know that your path was a little different.
Yes, it was a little different.
Why don't you tell us about that?
All right. Yeah. So, as you know, I started performing already in high school. I'm actually North Carolinian, but my mother worked for an airline, so we moved quite a bit. And as it grew, eventually U.S. Airways opened. When they opened the Hartsfield Airport in Atlanta, my mother opened that airport for U.S. Airways with U.S. Airways. And so I was there, and there was a high school for the performing arts, and my mother stuck me in there already in like the 10th grade. So by the
Wow.
time I graduated, I was a pretty seasoned performer, but I couldn't read a note of music, you know. And the director of the program had recognized that he knew voices and he knew opera and he knew different classifications. And even though I was doing Broadway for him in the program, he told me, I don't think this is your thing. I think you'll be an opera singer. And I basically said, what? You know, I mean, I come from a family that when my mom said, oh, she's going to sing opera, they thought, you know, Grand Ole Opry, you know.
I could see you. I could see you with rhinestones. Yes.
You know what I mean? So that's most we knew. But anyway, this man, Mr. William Dinsmore was his name, the founder and director of the Northside High School for Performing Arts. He had created a touring company that was sponsored by Coca-Cola and a lot of industry, and we did a lot of performing. You know, I counted one time, it must have been about 80 performances a school year after school. And anyway, in every case, he built into this touring company my senior year the two pieces, O Rest in the Lord and Stri de la Vampa, or being the Georgian that he was, he liked to say Stri de la Vampa. And and taught me these pieces, and then took me to various university auditions until I won a full scholarship to Georgia State, which was there in Atlanta. And I started studying then my professional studying career, I guess, with Florence Copleff, who was a well-known contralto, really, with the Atlanta Symphony and Robert Shaw and everything. But I didn't really get it. And it was a little bit of a conflict because I was sort of well known in Atlanta as a musical theater person, and I got jobs still as a musical theater person. And so it was a little bit of a conflict. And basically what happened is I went home once Thanksgiving to North Carolina, and a cousin of mine was talking about someone who had gotten a job at the School of the Arts in North Carolina. And I said, is that in our town? And they said, yes. And I said, I want to go see it. And they drove me over there, like right then. We went to look at it. And I said, okay, I'm coming home. And when I transferred to North Carolina School of the Arts, it was the best thing because it was much more of a conservatory environment, whereas Georgia State at that time was a commuter campus even. And so I started completely from the beginning, and I had a wonderful teacher, Frederick Moses, who, you know, just as things go how they should go, was also the new teacher in the school. And I was a new student, and I got, you know, put in the new studio, but it was the best thing that ever happened. And he really opened up the understanding of, you know, studying voice, what you need to do, and especially if you can sing. You know, I could already sing, had done so in church, had done so as semi, I guess, professionally, high school professionally. In every case, then I studied those 4 years at North Carolina School of the Arts. And in those days, the actual district competitions for the Met were held at the campus because, you know, that was the arts institution. And so my senior year, after sitting there for, you know, the past 3 years, every year watching all the big singers try it, I thought, okay, I don't have anything to lose. I'll give it a whirl. You know, that end of your bachelor's, you don't know exactly which way, which program. I auditioned for all of the programs as well and whatever. And I ended up winning the Metropolitan Opera competition, you know, going through the district to the regionals to New York. And in between, I had already auditioned as well for Wolf Trap apprentice program because I was looking, you know, getting ready to graduate, looking for options. So I ended up basically driving from North Carolina to Virginia to do the summer program as I took my degree, and packed my car, drove to Virginia, did Wolf Trap, and then drove to New York and started the Young Artist Development Program at the Met. And then I did that for 4 years, and, you know, did the whole New York scene, 3 years really, and then stayed on as 1 year as an artist. And in between doing other things, and then I, you know, auditions and growing, learning about opera, because I was really not only a North Carolinian transplanted to New York, but, you know, an opera neophyte in the temple, you know. It was I was probably pretty sad when I got there, when I think back. But anyway, so I spent those years learning and getting developed and doing auditions. And as that goes, in those days, I was fortunate to have Cami as a agency where when they had the building where they had Cami Hall. So all of the various people rented Cami Hall for auditions. So you basically got seen by tons of people in an audition season. And one of those happened to be Stuttgart. And I had just started doing Verdi. I had done Seattle, Amneris in Seattle and things like that. And they were looking for quickly. And so that became my European debut, so to speak, quickly there in Stuttgart as a guest. And then I was asked to stay. And so, all those couple of decades ago, since then, it was 10 years in Stuttgart, and now I've been basically 10 years here in Dresden, singing various roles. And that's a short version.
Well, we'll also have to add that you are now a Grammy Award winner too. Yeah, so we'll have to add that too. I'm very interested. I know that being today is Richard Wagner's birthday, but I'm also interested in the path that you took to being a Wagnerian. I'm sure you didn't just wake up in the morning and say, okay, I'm a Wagnerian. I know that that's not the case. And if you did, I want to know why. But Luana, what was your path to Wagner? I know you have said that, that's a very special type of music for you, the German repertoire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my previous experience with Wagner, luckily I had it, was in the San Francisco Opera course, as I mentioned before. Then when I got the position in Aachen, that was my first position way back in 1984, I don't mind saying. And the first opera was Forza del Destino that I sang. The second opera was my introduction to Wagner, and that was Flying Dutchman as Senta. And so I just thought, well, this is really wonderful. I love the music. I love it. There's some challenges in it that are slightly different. I realized it took a little more strength in my body that I was used to using in the Italian repertoire. I went to orchestra only rehearsals so that I could hear what kind of orchestration was written when I was singing, so that I would know what were the big moments and where could I sing piano or mezzo piano. And be more expressive. So I prepared very, very well for it. I had a wonderful director whose name just flitted through my mind and just escaped me again. Opening night came, and lo and behold, who's in the audience but Wolfgang Wagner. I was terrified because I'd never sung Wagner at all before, and here was the grandson himself sitting in the audience. And so apparently he liked it because he kept tabs on me. And it was like the beginning, which ended in singing at Bayreuth Festival after Tichina and I had met each other and sang together. So some things come full circle. That was the beginning, and Goetterdaemmerung, Twilight of the Gods in Bayreuth was an amazing occurrence in my life.
Und in jedes
I
So
never heard that.
yeah, that's Alan Titus was
Yeah.
and for those of us who were in New York, we remember Alan Titus as a young baritone that he used to sing with Beverly Sills. He did Figaro, Beverly Sills. He did Rossini, and of course, he made his debut in Leonard Bernstein's Mass.
Yeah.
So that was a young Alan Titus.
Mhm.
Um, Tichina, your path to Wagnerism.
Yeah. Well, it was very different in that it was an unexpected thing for me. However, I do believe that life was setting me up for it all along, because it just so happened that the teacher that I had at North Carolina School of the Arts, Frederick Moses, had been I'm sure, yeah, fest singer somewhere in Germany. I was just trying to think of the company. I can't remember which city. And so in my undergraduate, I sang a lot of German lead, and I loved, and I still do sing a lot of German lead. And one of my first European experiences was coming to the American Institute of Musical Studies in Graz, where I also sang a lot of German lead. So I already was really in love with German repertoire when I started my operatic career. However, because I had such an Italianate sound, apparently, when I was younger, there was no recommendations for me as far as Wagner was concerned. And it wasn't until I got to Stuttgart and I did the quickly that Pamela Rosenberg suggested that I might want to try some Wagner. I want to say the first one was Erda.
Oh.
And it was something like in Germany, in the opera houses, they have Studienleiter, who is the person who's responsible for making sure that the singers know their music in time for rehearsals. And it went something like, I looked at the plan one day and my name was down with the Studienleiter for Wagner, and I went to the coaching and he said, okay, we're going to do these 2 pages, because Erda ends up being about 2 pages, but it's like 2 pages of for real work. But in every case, he said, we're going to do these 2 pages. And I said, okay. And he started teaching it to me. And we did the first day. And he said, okay, now go home and learn and come back. And it began like that, because, which I'm so grateful for. I think that in some places, these things are so separated from each other. There's this concept that if a person sings one thing, they can't sing another thing as well.
Mhm.
So I was really grateful to Pamela for opening that door for me.
Wow. Now you both have sung Ortrud, and we're gonna. I want to circle back to that in this next little area, but I want to talk about people's thoughts about singing Wagner. Now, I'm going to give you 2 quotes, and they're both from rather well-known singers. Okay, one is no longer with us. But Nikolai Gedda, the very famous Swedish tenor, said, Wagner singing is a special kind of way of singing. Their voices were adapted in a special way to this type of singing. And Renee Fleming said after her debut at Bayreuth in Eva in Meistersinger that she needed to take a few weeks off to realign her voice because of the way Wagner wrote for Eva. It's very interesting because people feel that there are several issues that Wagnerian singers need to take into account. One is the expectation of extreme vocal volume and penetrating power, clearly articulated and projected German diction at a mid range vocal tessitura, lengthy and repeated tests of vocal stamina, the consequences of sustained heavy singing on vocal health, and the problem of vocal categorization. I want to know
Who was that again, Steve? Who was that you were just quoting?
this article was written by a gentleman by the name of Sean Parr, Parr, and the first one was Nikolai Gedda, who said that there's a special way to sing Wagner, and Renee Fleming said uh, she needed to take a few weeks off after Eva in Meistersinger to realign her voice. And then he went on to say that all these other things are expected of a Wagner singer. And I want to know what you two feel about that.
Well, I used to have a saying, which I haven't said for a long time, and it's not really, maybe not so nice, but it's like you shouldn't hitch a pony to the Budweiser beer wagon. Yeah. So in some respects, I agree with Mr. Parr more than I do with Renee Fleming. Also very interesting, Waltraud Meyer mentioned to me after singing Tristan and Isolde, she said she could not come back and do what I was doing, which was singing another repertoire the next day. We were singing together in the other repertoire, the Gurlieder in Vienna. And so you have to have a stable, sturdy instrument. You have to have a strong body that can sustain. It takes a lot of strength to sing 5.5 hours. I don't know how Tichina felt, but I really enjoyed going to the Italian repertoire, which I did quite often. I sang Verdi, Aida, Ballo, those kind of things. And I felt like I was on vacation, but it was a good vacation in that I was forced to sing with a beautiful legato and improve my breath without the strenuous at the same time of singing Wagner. I found Verdi improved my Wagner and my Wagner improved my Verdi because it was effortless to sing that repertoire. So I think if you have to take 3 weeks of vocal rest to realign your voice, you should not be singing Wagner, period. I mean, that's the answer.
Yeah.
And to anybody who is teaching young people or whatever, I would encourage them, and they show some interest in Wagner, pick one of the lighter roles, have them learn it and sing it with the piano and see how the voice feels. Because you'll either feel like the first time I tried out Tristan, my voice didn't like the low register and the sustained lowness of it. But 3 years later, I could handle that. The voice was all right. But I needed that 3 years of growth in order to go to that role with its style. So you can sing Wagner and stay very healthy. Tichina did it. I did it. I can still sing, in my age right now, retired. And so it's, there are a lot of, if you have this, if you have this, if you have this, and if you love singing that, and if you are expressive, then go ahead and sing Wagner. But if it's too much of a burden on your voice, stay away from it by all means. There's much more beautiful music to sing.
That's true. Tichina, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that, I'm sitting here going through my catalog, to be honest, because I have the feeling that a little bit of the Wagner experience depends on the voice type. Because, for example, in the entire ring cycle, there is no comparable mezzo role to any of the soprano roles. That means that to say that none of the, very worthy and very challenging mezzo roles in the ring cycle continue for 5 hours.
Right, that's true.
None of them. Most of them are what I like to call cameos.
Yes.
The Fricka in the Rheingold is sort of makes more appearances, but she actually sings less than the Fricka in the Walküre,
Right.
who makes a scene and is a scene, you know. And then of course the Valtrauta, she has a nice, beautiful scene, and she's gone. And then I mean, I'm just cataloging my roles,
Mhm.
Venus. She's there at the beginning and then goes away. Orchard is the most
Yes.
taxing
Yeah.
that I have done. And I think I shared with you, Steve, that, I'd love to have another chance at her, because I think like all things, when you first, in my opinion, what I remember as a young singer, when I was first presented a role, what do? You check out the arias. Big mistake. Because there's all the stuff that lies in between. It's
That's
going to keep your breath. That's the stuff you need to know. And so with the Orchard, for example, I felt truly ready. I've only had the one there in the Semper Opera, which is the clip that you played. And we had 3 or 4 performances of it. But I was dying to get a chance to do it. But what I realized in those performances is that what you better do is get yourself ready for that coronation act and forget everything else. That aria and all that is just
yeah.
fluff. You know? And so in that way, yes, I agree that it's a completely other type of demand, even though obviously Amneris or, Eboli or any of the other Italian roles that I've done a lot, except for Ulrika, who, is also a one-act wonder. um, but the rest of those girls, they require, and I have to say, the way I approached them was not different in the way that I sang them, but different in the stylistic aspects. And I made it a real point to go to the noted interpreters of those. For example, I took my Wagner to Christa Ludwig, and I studied my Italian with an Italian maestro. Because I always found this, and now, for example, when I have to do Russian, I like to go to a Russian. If I have to, do Czech, I go to a Czech, because I find that there are other intricacies of every language. That's what I took from those. For example, when I went to Christa Ludwig, there were just things about German that I couldn't know. I'm not German, And so, and that was very helpful, though, in the approach and in the, actual performance of the piece. So,
We've talked about this, both of you, with the Italianate. Luana just said about that the Italian helped the German and vice versa. The one thing, and I've mentioned this to Luana, she is in a very special club. She actually is one of the very few, and I think there are 4 that I counted now, sopranos who have actually sung Bruennhilde and Norma.
Oh,
Yeah, Lily Lehmann was one. Jane Eaglin was one, Christine Gerke, Rita Hunter, and Luana. So there are 5 that I count. I just read, and believe it or not, in doing the research for that, I read an article from the Times in 1930 something that Kirsten Flogstad was going to take some time off to prepare Norma, and then somewhere in the middle she just said, "No, it's not going to work." But were all of them successful? No. Luana, though, I'm going to actually play a little bit of Costa Diva.
oh
I
dear.
want you to hear this line because it is very, very beautiful. Okay, I'm going to read you something. Wagner was much more positive and about the Italian bel canto school of singing. He regarded that as the healthiest vocal method for singers. Although he thought little of singers who blithely brought their Italian bel canto style to German operatic singing, Wagner admired the melodic writing of Bellini in particular and idolized the vocal beauty of the music. What was it like, Luana, attacking that style? I mean, obviously you spun out the line beautifully, and they say that Norma, of course, is the pinnacle of bel canto singing. What
Mhm.
was it? How did you go and approach that then?
I had to work very hard, Steve. I had to work really, really hard on several aspects. But I found that I did have to change the position of my singing to a much higher resonance and a much more forward place than I did in singing the German vowels. And in order to spin those long lines, you have to have a much smaller aperture, or a resonance placing to be able to spin those long, long lines. The fioritura was something that I had not done very much at all. That comes just after the Casta Diva. I had to work very hard on that, but it was excellent work. I mean, everything that I did on Norma improved my vocal technique 100%. So it's just, I have to say something else about working on the Norma, and that was with Stefan Scholtes. He had the singers come a week before the orchestra rehearsals or staging rehearsals, and we sat in a studio all together, and we worked all together on the musical aspects. This is the way they used to produce opera. The conductor would be there. They would have musical rehearsals, and everything was clear before you once ever even thought about moving your feet. And by the time we got in front of the orchestra for the for the first orchestra rehearsal, the orchestra just kind of was startled. They could sense the work that we had done was so musical, and they had to pull themselves up by the bootstraps to match it. So that was also a great deal, is that we had the calmness, I want to say the Ruhe, the calmness to work musically and to get these lines flowing exactly the way you wanted to, understood clearly by the conductor, interpreted by the conductor to the orchestra, and there we were then on stage. And it was a concert performance, I must say. So
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
yeah, that makes it a lot easier because you can stand and just concentrate on breathing and producing and concentrate on the text. So it was another, I'm glad you played that, and I'm glad you picked that out, because that was another pinnacle piece
Well,
in my career.
it's because when you say someone who has done um, and made a great success in the heavier Wagner, and we haven't even spoke a little bit about Strauss, but um, it's you don't find that many wanting to bring their voice into, as you say, a smaller way of singing, to be
Mhm.
able to spin that out. Not many people would do that. And I think it takes you have to know your voice, and you have to know yourself,
Yes, yes, yes.
to be able to say, I can do this.
Yeah, but you work
Obviously,
on your voice every day.
yes.
For me, I did not have a natural technique. I had to work for it, and I had to work every day. Every morning you wake up, your body's different, and you struggle with your voice to get it back into place where you want. I mean, it's just like it drives you crazy if you're a singer sometimes.
Yeah. I want to talk about productions. Now, you both have sung in many different productions, whether it's Bayreuth or Dresden or wherever. What can you tell me about what you consider the best? I know this is going to be a hard question for you. The best Wagnerian production, and why was it the best Wagnerian production for you? And something you think had the potential to be the one of the best Wagnerian productions you were in, but unfortunately the audience didn't buy into it. You notice I didn't say the worst Wagnerian production, but I said the one that you thought would be the best or would be really up there, and the audience didn't buy into it. Who wants to go first?
Tichina.
Let me unmute myself then. Well, I have to say, actually, mine are probably one and the same, because the whole Stuttgart ring cycle concept was really an unusual thing, and it really did end up being one of those things that either you love it or you hate it. And well, and it all had to do with the fact that it was originally scheduled to be produced by one stage director, and there was a series of events prohibited that from happening. And because a ring cycle is such an involved situation, I think it was maybe a season or two before.
At least, yeah.
Yeah, and so there was no way to get one person to now commit again. So there was this, wonderful ideal of getting 4 different directors and 4 different casts, really, to do this piece, which, is a crazy thing in a lot of people's eyes. When you do a ring cycle, it's supposed to be of a piece, Mm-hmm. So that was already so the one that some people from the public just didn't buy. But on the other hand, it was really a life-changing moment for me, because it was my first Wagner from the ground up. The other productions that I had done in Kassel, I had done Erde in Augsburg, but they were already Wiederaufnahme that someone else had already created, and I just had to learn. And so, but this one, was my first new production of it. And, first of all, like I said, working with Luana, she was already at a level that I was hoping to get to at some point, not only in her understanding and knowledge and experience of Wagner, but just as a singer in general. And as a woman handling herself in this business, in this country, it was like taking notes every day. Really, it was like, you see me sitting at that table, I'm supposed to be fussing at her for being a bad sister, but I'm really taking notes every day. And then we had this, which was really, like she said, one of the highlights of my early career was working with Peter Convictioning. I had not had that experience prior to that. And Luana and Peter had worked together previously. So there was already another window into the Arbeitsweise, how you work, how you do, and I think we're not taught enough how important these aspects are to a career as well, not just learning notes or learning rhythms or singing, but also how you work in a professional way, how you work with professionals in a professional space, So all of that was really eye-opening and life-changing for me in that aspect. So my production is my 2 answers are one and the same.
Luana?
Yeah, I have 2. I was going to 3. One in Vienna with the old Schneider seam that was not ring, but it was Tannhäuser, and it was so beautiful. I mean, the trees and the rocks and there was a cross there where you prayed, and it was au natural, just so beautiful, and your costume was gorgeous, and that was opera in old style, and I must say it was a great pleasure not to have to deal with contemporary things that sometimes get in the way. The fight for after that upwards would be the time tunnel, Friedrich. There was a beautiful production, and Gertz Friedrich was an amazing director. We're always in the right place at the right time when you had your piece to sing, and he was just a master at moving people on the stage so that he was a storyteller. And the ring was very exciting, although it was not so easy some of the times, and the difficulty with it through the time into the, for me, was scary, but you just have to forget that, just run. And but I felt that showed me the touch of a master, and I was so sorry we lost him so when he was so young, still years left to direct, fortunately. I agree with Sheena that the Stuttgart Ring was an amazing production. First of all, the approach that he took was very much natural theater, normal theater, where we would sit around and we would discuss the scene before we even set foot on the stage. And he would go through the libretto and discuss the ideas that Wagner was wanting to put forth. And by the time we got up on stage, it almost staged itself, because we knew how to relate to the other people. We knew what we were supposed to do, what we were supposed to admit. He would give you certain guidelines to do, and then he would give you artistic freedom. One of the hardest things I had to do is he asked me, and it was all in every single review, oh my gosh, was to show Bruennhilde's defiance after she's been raped of the ring, basically, is that I had to remove my panties to show that I am in control. The falsche Gunther. And the audience kind of, they would just gasp. It took me 3 days before I could do that. But I asked various people, what do you think of this scene? What do you think of it? And for me, I found an artistic truth in Bruennhilde's character to do that. I would only do that for Peter, not for any other director. You know, something to go so far against what I personally felt. But yeah, for me, it was work. Colleagues like Tichina, we had so much fun in our scene. And after,
if I was Tichina, I would have asked for hazard pay.
Well, you know, it was really the love of Wagner and the love of Peter Konvichny. But basically, I mean, that was the thing, and I was all game for it. Listen, it was exciting, you know. I was all game for it until the first day we tried it, which I'm so sorry I could not find the footage, but I know Luana will remember that day because, you know, it's a never before done thing, yeah. And so, and in the first rehearsal, it was, you know, I loved the theater in Stuttgart, and I really love, I know he probably will never see this, but there was a Bühnenmeister named Benno, who, you know, I put my life in his hands, and he was always there. And Benno would be there, and he said, okay, so we're gonna take this very slow. We're gonna try this the first time. They want you to, basically what happened is backstage, so this whole outfit is made up of like a mountain climbing harness underneath this metal, really made of metal body shield thing. And this mountain climbing harness thing has a seat, so that when they actually behind stage would raise me up 20 meters, which I don't even know how many feet it is. But so they would raise me up 20 meters to on the side of the stage where the pult is. And then I would sit there. And so they didn't know in the first rehearsals how long this would take, you know, because what I would do is you raise up, and then slowly while she's saying, they put me over to directly over the hole. I'm still sitting in the swing thing, over the hole, and at the right moment, drop me through the hole. So the first rehearsal, there was a question of, does she need to go up, you know, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, how many seconds before, how many minutes before? So, but they made the mistake of pulling me up and then talking about it while I was and so I'm up 20 meters in this harness, you know, and it was horrible because they were doing this documentary, which I tried to find, I couldn't, but at that time, Peter Konvichny was getting a documentary done, and they came in to record this thing. And I remember watching this documentary like years later. And of course, they kept this moment where I'm going, hello, ich will Ruta. Hello. laughing like, you know. And so, you know, because I'm up 20 meters and you know how theaters are stacked. So there's a stairwell, there's a guy in front of me and I go, Ich will runter.
You want to translate that?
I want to get down. Bring me down. So, and of course, this is in this German documentary about, you know, Peter Convention. You hear me in my broken German, horrible German at that time, you know. But anyway, eventually I came down. They let me calm down and gave me some juice. And they were like, okay, we'll try it again when you're ready. But they were very kind. It was a very, you know, a comfortable process in the sense that I felt the technicians really had my welfare in mind, and I was excited to do something so stunning, you know. And so
Really an exciting entrance. I mean, if you think about it, it's one that's not expected.
Well, and I mean, I'm already, so my first line is 20 meters above, sitting in the swing, waiting to be, you know, pulled electronically across the stage.
Did you have a conductor standing next to you, you know, ready to?
I'm right in front of a video screen.
Okay.
Yeah, and a technical guy there.
You know what I want to talk about? I want to talk about, because I know we have some singers in the session. You both, Luana, you had mentioned that you had a son, and I know, Tichina, you have a couple of children also. How did you guys combine it? There is, you know, there are so many stories on how male singers, you know, it might be hard on them to leave their families during the time they have to go. But I think it's harder. I personally believe it's harder on female singers. How, first, how did you handle that? I know, Luana, your son was older, but still, you were still leaving him. How did you handle that? And what kind of advice would you give to young singers who might want to have family or already have children and definitely do want to make that sort of career?
Yeah, well, my advice, or I don't know if you'd call it advice, but my observation is that there is no good time to have children. I mean, you're not going to take 3 years off and have the kids, you know, because when you get offers to come in, you want to take advantage of them, you want to sing. It's very difficult to be pregnant and have your performances too. You know, so there's a certain time where you can no longer sing. But if you want children, I would say go ahead and have them. And what singers do then is you travel and you find nannies in those cities, or you take if you can afford it, you bring your own nanny. I know that Nina Stemma, when I was working with her, she did her first Elsa, and I did my first Ortrud with her together in Basel. And she and her husband were lucky because they had 2 sets of grandparents. So if you have support like that, it's much easier to have children. In my case, my son was ready to fly the coop, and as young people are, he felt he knew better than everybody else. And so I said, here's the door, Mama's going, doing what I...
Yes, but then your son obviously, you know, decided, oh, I like being around singers, and married one.
He did indeed, and I'm so lucky that he fell in love with Emily McGee. And
yes, she's a wonderful singer.
She is indeed, and he's a wonderful opera spouse because he understands the business. He was with me very often. I brought him over to Germany to be with me for a couple of years, and he went to a university in Heidelberg. And so often he would come to performances, and he knew where every cantina was, always brought me coffee and a little half of a which I need, like in Tristan. I always had that between the third and the second and third act when I was about on my end from the interview. And so we're best friends now. I'm so lucky to have him. And I think to have children in your life is important. It's a very difficult decision for those who have not had children. They decided to have the career and not children. That was their decision, and perhaps that was the best decision for them. It's as you say, I think it is harder on the women.
Yeah.
And because the men leave, and very often, that doesn't work out because he's out performing and she's home with the kids. And he comes home and like, who's that? I know other Jugendliche Dramatische soprano I was working with had a family in Cologne, a husband and a 9-year-old child. And sometimes I say, why are you here? You have time to go home. And she said, it's disturbing for them, for their routine, if I come in for 2 days and then leave. Yeah. So they make sacrifices. And it is a sacrifice if you have the kids. You can always be with them. It's hard.
Tichina?
Yeah, first of all, I have to say, though, it's a very interesting story about Luana's son, because when I was in Dresden, I'm in Dresden now, and I went to a performance once. They were doing a Forza, and I asked for a ticket at the last minute, so I got, one of the comp seats or whatever. And I was seated beside this gentleman who turned out to be an American as well. And we started talking in the public or whatever. And, and he said, oh, yes, well, I'm here with my, for my wife. Are you here with someone? I said, no, I'm a member of the house. And he goes, oh, well, I'm here with my wife. And I said, oh, and he said, yeah, I met her. Somehow he said he met her at Bayreuth. And he said, well, I was traveled a lot with my mom. And I said, oh, well, who's your mom? And he said, Luana DeVol. And I said, no way. So that was really cool, to run into him there. But for me as a mom, I decided early, when I came to Germany early, my son, I had already had my first son, my first child, my son, and he was about 3 or 4. And what happened was I met the other singers in the ensemble, and we were fortunate. I know that now in Stuttgart. It was a very well-respected ensemble, and we were, handled very, very well. And so I recognized this opportunity to continue my career because it was difficult in the States, I will say. Being a freelance opera singer means never being at home, really just never, if you want to make a living of it. And so that is a whole, and you really need to have a certain fee level to be able to afford nannies and all the things that requires. So when I came over here and I met these lovely ladies who were having really wonderful careers, but basically working in the same theater all the time and being able to tuck their kids in at night. And then I was offered that opportunity as a young mother. That was very appealing. And although I didn't expect to stay the rest of my life, as it's turned out, I came with I had a 3-year contract at that time. And I thought, well, it certainly will be good for the child to, have this world exposure, as well as for myself to, start a career in Europe. And so I went from there. But I do feel that it is sort of a more civilized way to have an operatic career because of that one aspect. If you want to have a career and a family, and not only that, for example, you're also offered here in Europe the possibility of, once you have a child, and I have several colleagues that when they got pregnant, they, stopped singing for a year or 2 because Germany offers that. Raised their child and spent 2 years being a mom, and then they were able to come back into the ensemble and eventually do their work again. So I did raise my children that way. They're now both older and but almost out of house. The younger, my daughter, she just turned 20 Thursday. So, and she's still doing university, but but the thing is, though, when I was a young singer, it was not something that people encouraged, having children, I will have to say. And as a matter of fact, I remember when I worked with Krista Ludwig on the Walter, her asking me in one of our sessions if I had children. And I said, yes, I have a son. And her answer was, don't have any more. Yeah,
It's funny, there's a wonderful documentary that was done by Robert Merrill's wife. It's called I Live for Art, Tosca. and they spoke to 13 or 14 sopranos who had been famous in the role of Tosca. And one of the discussions was about having children. And I remember Birgit Nielsen saying, you can't have it all. You can't have it all.
Yeah.
And other singers saying they had to make a decision whether it was important to, you know, take the time off to even become pregnant
Yeah.
to do that. And some were saying, no, you can have it, you can do it. So even 20 years ago, the jury was out. Although I think nowadays more women are having children
Yeah,
than they did years ago.
I wanted to say that, you know, it was a very interesting experience, you know, okay, coming forward to present day, and mothers with children in our business. You know, the recent experience that I had at the Met of doing Dialogue of the Carmelites, I had my dresser, no, actually Susie, who basically runs backstage there at the Met, she's been there a long time. And she had a very interesting observation in the sense that, you know, that cast is just basically full of women and a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And the majority of us were mothers.
Yeah.
And there were even quite a number of children backstage, which Susie just noticed or remarked in her time. I think she's been 20 years, almost 20 years or so, was a big change.
Yeah.
Because there was a time when there were absolutely no children backstage at the Met. So for all of us to be mothers and to also, you know, some people have their children there, that was also, I think it's I actually think it's a step in the right direction. I don't think you should have to.
I think it is. I agree.
Yeah, you know, I think that, you know, if you're able to balance those responsibilities and you know, understand that there's the responsibilities of it. It's not like you just have the child and drop them off. You know, but you also don't have the career and drop it off, you know. So.
Yeah.
I want to, the last topic before we open up for questions, and I want to apologize because Luana, I wanted to play the Vater bist du from Frau und Schatten.
Oh, yeah.
Because, but I don't know if I have the time, but I wanted to mention that we were talking about productions, and for anybody, I finally got my hands on the complete production. And it is one of the most gorgeous productions that I have seen. And it's also beautifully sung and beautifully done. And stylistic. It's in kabuki, I would say. That's the style. I have to say that going back, my first Frau und Schatten at the Met was the old Robert O'Hearn, Nathaniel Merrill production, which I thought was spectacular. And I have to say my first Kaiserin was Leonie Rieseneck. But you really, it was amazing. The way you sang, and then hit the high D, which many sopranos in the opening they just like they run away from. And you know, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. And then of course you moved on to sing the Dyer's wife. But if anybody can, and even that particular scene is on YouTube, please take some time and look at it. It is the most beautiful production. The symbols, the gold sheets that they use for water. It's a gorgeous production. I want to talk about young artist programs, and Luana, you are the American Wagner Project, and Tichina, you're working with Opera Programs Berlin. Tichina, you obviously were in a young artist program, and Luana, your early career was your young artist program.
That's right.
What do you, as now moving from that career, you know, in your case, Luana, into the education, and Tichina, you're balancing your career with these education programs. what do you feel about them, and what do you advise young singers to? I feel that young singers need to know what they need to take away from these programs. Don't go into it blindly. They need to know what you want from a program. And if the program's not going to give you what you want, do not go to it, because you will wind up being unhappy and it will not be a good experience for you. And ultimately, it will be a waste of money. But I want to know what you two feel about young artist programs, and especially the ones that you're doing, which I know you'll love both of them very much.
First, I like your observation very, very much, Steve, in that the singers, young singers, should research the programs. Some programs are performance driven. They've already decided what performance they want to do, and therefore they get singers into the program that fit their casting. And with my program, the American Wagner project, which started in 2013, it's still a relatively young program. And I was asked to join Dolores Zajic's Institute for Young Dramatic Voices in this separate division, American Wagner project. And so that was grounded in 2013. And our program is not performance driven. Is very much more a training opportunity where we listen to singers, we select singers internationally. We get applications from all over the world. And so we invite them to, normally without COVID, they would be invited to come to Reno for 3 weeks of intensive, and now 4 weeks for some of them. Dolores extended the time for 3 to 4 weeks, depending on which program you're in. And you're given the opportunity to work with coaches from all over. We have Beatrice Benzi from La Scala. We have John Parr from Deutsche Oper Berlin. Do you know John Parr by any chance? Deutsche Oper Berlin. And Tom Morocco, who's a very, very well-known coach in New York. You might know of him. Yelena Kurdina for the Russian. So we have basically all languages covered, and they're given extensive diction lessons. And we do work with them in that we want to know, what repertoire are you interested in learning, and how can we help you? It's very much driven on the singer themselves, very much focused on them. And each person's program is individually designed to fit their needs. It's more intensive work that way. But we feel in that short time period that we have, 3 to 4 weeks, that is the best way to manage those people. And we're eventually, not eventually, but we are collaborating now with the Reno Philharmonic. So that gives us a performance opportunity. We'll select people from the program to appear in that program. We did the first one 2 years ago. And it was very, very successful, packed house and outdoors. It was a lovely, lovely scene. And now we're also collaborating with the Miami Music Festival. And because they have a Wagner program, we have the Wagner singers. So we're doing a handshake with Michael Rossi, who formed that organization there. And the goal is to prepare the singers for the Wagner performance. So that's where we come in. But before doing that, I also was general director of Opera Las Vegas for 4 years, and produced 4 operas at the University of Nevada here in Las Vegas. That was fun, but I found for one person, it was an amazing amount of work. And after the 4th year, I said, and it was volunteer, of course. And I said, this is like working too hard for a volunteer position. And I felt that somebody else could handle it maybe better. Somebody younger needed to take it on. Yeah, so I've been kept busy. I have a small private studio. And so between that and the administrative work that I now do for the Wagner project with Delora, my days are pleasantly filled with teaching and working on music and looking at repertoire. And fortunately, seeing old dear friends like Tichina, we had so much fun working together. I'm so happy. Here's a hug, a virtual hug to you. Yeah.
You want to tell us about Opera Berlin quickly? Because I want to make sure we get questions from the people.
Yeah. Well, so far, I've just recently started working with Opera Programs Berlin, and so far we've been mostly virtual. I haven't had a chance to do in-person work with them, but I find that in general, this concept of, especially when you're speaking, not just of coming into the business of opera, but coming into the business of opera in a foreign country, that such programs are really, really crucial because in a way, although some operas now in Germany do have these young artist but they're not really young artist programs. They're more the youngest ensemble, they call them. And they do get some coachings, and here in Dresden, for example, in the Semper Opera, they even had John Norris coming in doing body work, and I know they had Deborah Pulaski come and do some master classes and things like that. But I think that when I did young artist programs a million years ago, I think what's important is what you said, that people know what they want to get from it. I was just young and open and waiting for the program to tell me basically what I was supposed to get from it. Because, but I feel that the singers that I've met these days, and, I'm actually working with some, recent graduates, young artist programs these days. And I find that they're an older, first of all, that they're older and more mature than we were. I mean, I actually started in my early 20s.
Yeah, I think so.
Which you're not finding much of that anymore. So I think that, these people in their late 20s, early 30s are getting these opportunities. That's the right thing, because they have become, in my opinion, more or less springboards for taking the main stage, And
I'm
so,
I'm also thrilled in the sense that I can announce that both Tichina and Luana, and I know in the audience is Dr. Isola Jones, and they are going to be part of our jury for our competition in 2021. And we are also expanding it to have a special prize for dramatic voices. So I think that's important, because that certainly is somewhere that's been overlooked in some cases and abused in others. So I think that that's very important. What I'm going to do is ask everybody to come. Let me see you, and certainly. Hi, Lainey, and let's Isola, and let me raise your hand, please, if you have a question. And Isola, ask a question.
I have a question for you ladies. How fantastic. I have loved it, but I have a burning question. I have never sung at Bayreuth, and Wagner built the stage over the orchestra, brought in one of the Garcia sisters to teach his singers how to sing. So both Luana and Tichina. Luana, you mentioned when you sing Verdi, you find a higher aperture, a smaller aperture to spin the sound. Could you, or is it possible, if the orchestras were not so loud, that you could still sing Wagner the same way you sing Verdi? Is that possible? Because otherwise, you said you had to kind of technique.
The smaller aperture and the smaller resonating was more with the bel canto piece. It was not with Verdi. With Verdi, it was a much more related to the Wagner, because when you sing Wagner, you sing Italian at vowels. My opinion. And what I teach is you sing Wagner with Italian vowels, and what you must learn is how to manage to speak all of those consonants and still the vowel undisturbed by the demands of the language. For example, take the word Schlacht, to slaughter.
Okay. Oh,
that
I'll
kind
take
of,
that.
yeah, done, but get off it. There are 7 consonants in that word and 1 tiny little vowel. How are you going to sing that? First of all, you have to keep the vowel forward like you singing Italian, and
Right.
then you SCH together in one sound, SCH, L, shla, then you go immediately into the vowel using the L, shla, so you get an Italian A, and then you use CHT together, you go to the final consonant, which is the most forward one in German usually.
Right.
So you sing the T, you start off with the L, the resonant consonant, and you end with the T, so you have the word Schlacht. And it's perfectly understandable to the audience, and you still have a vowel. So that's the only difference, is you need to sing the Italian vowels out. Bad German is when you sing everything and you sing vowels inside the mouth with some big, and a dropped larynx, excuse me, but I'm very much against the dropped larynx.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, that's going to ruin your voice in 2 seasons if you try to sing that way. And it's happening right now with a person. So anyway, so the difference is you can't sing Bellini like you sing Verdi. So that was the difference that I had to alter to a much finer point, that I spin the Bellini line. But with Verdi, it's much more organic, and I just, what my favorite opera is, Aida. It's not Wagner. I loved singing Aida. The scene with Amneris is just so exciting, and the perfect Nile scene. It's a perfect act. All of the singers and all of the participants, and in the duet with the tenor, you get a chance to walk forward and you sing with a woodwind trio as you're singing a seductive song to Radames. And it's just the melodies are just insanely beautiful. So at heart, I think I'm more of a lyric person, and it was probably more because of my 6'1" size and the sturdy body. I'm Swedish, so half Swedish. So I think it was genetically, I was predisposed to be a dramatic soprano, but my soul is lyric.
Luana, it's funny. I had the second part of O Patria Mia to play, and again we didn't have enough time to do it. So that's a shame. It is beautiful. Lainey, you have a question.
I sure do. So my question is in regards to young artist programs, especially for me, similar to Luana. I came to this quite late and figured out what I was at about 30. And so I'm struggling because I've now aged out of a lot of the young artist programs that give us that launching pad into the professional world. So I'm kind of stuck with what could I do to then prepare myself for the professional world, but also get my foot in the door?
Oh, I wish I had an answer for you. Every singer has their own individual path to success. Mine came very late, and I was almost 40 by the time I got my engagement in Aachen. I mean, that was incredibly unusual. But I did it the old-fashioned way. I made appointments with agents in Germany. They sent me out to houses that needed sopranos. And what is your voice category?
I am so far that I know, a dramatic soprano.
Okay, all right. What are you singing right now? What's your repertoire?
Oh man, I've been studying Dido's Lament, Purcell. I've been doing Die Streute Halle. I'm trying to think of other ones really quick.
Okay, that's okay. So if you do the old-fashioned way and go to agents and sing in Germany, because they have ensembles to fill, and do not take Elektra, the immolation scene. Take something believable, like Die Streute Halle is very, very good. The Jugendlich Dramatisch Fach, take that first. Even though you might have a voice that you think might grow a little more dramatically, you'll get your foot much more believably in the door. Ava, for example, if you have a good high register, you need a good high register for Ava. So I would say that it's a crime that the programs age out at 30. They should make exceptions for dramatic voices or people that they want to bring along as a dramatic voice, because your voice actually is not yet mature. You still have a way to go. You know, at 25, your voice gets some capabilities to it. At age 35, 34, 35, 36, your voice is going to grow up again. And then you're going, all the dramatic things, then you'll be able to do it. But right now, stick with the Jugendliche Dramatik Fach. Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to bring up, I'm going to speak because we have one of our singers here who is in our competition and who's wonderful, Elizabeth Lewis, and she did the transfer from mezzo to soprano. And what I'm going to ask you a question for you, Elizabeth. Okay, what advice do you give someone who does that? Because, you know, you have, you know, the Zwischenfach roles, you know, Sieglinde, Kundry in Parsifal is one of them. She's a strange duck. She sings everything in Act 2 and then, you know, she's done, basically, you know. She has very little in Act 1, does everything in Act 2, and then does really nothing in Act 3. But what kind of advice would you give a voice like that? Because that type of voice also takes longer to mature and to change and to settle into where they're going to go. Tichina, why don't you? Let's go to Tichina first.
Yeah.
Well, I would give the advice that I received. I mean, as you can imagine, I was speaking in another panel just the other night, and I asked the mezzos who have a nice top, how many of you have been told you might be a soprano? Yeah. You know, I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I heard that. But I was fortunate, I say again, to have a teacher who did not get caught up in those things. His philosophy was, let me teach you to sing and sing well. And then you will be able to decide for yourself and acknowledge for yourself what you sing well and what you don't. Once you understand how to sing and how you sing it. And so basically, I mean, I was offered some soprano roles every now and then. And I mean, I recently did the mother in Prigioniero, which is listed as a soprano role. You know, so I said that was my soprano role debut in a certain way. But I think that that's the most important thing, is that you find how you sing well and then pick the pieces that allow you to do that, you know. And the most important aspect of that is to sing a lot. Even if you sing at home, sing in the practice room, sing for your cousins, do salon concerts. If you can't get, you know, because by the time you did all that singing and you sing it well and you get an appointment with an agent, then you're just going to knock it out of the park. But if you've been futzing around with what should I sing, what works, find what works well for your voice, for your spirit, for your whole artistic person, and then present that.
Right.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Just unmute myself momentarily. Quick question with that as well. Luana was talking about when you go to see agents in Germany and you take things that are appropriate. Do you think with the young dramatic soprano rep that you could do like big Mozart as well to show that you still have that line and all of those things?
Yeah.
So things like in the Domineo, the Elektra in Domineo, as opposed to, you know, taking Strauss Elektra, you've still got a character there, but it's more appropriate vocally in singing.
Yeah, I would, yes, if you can, you know, like Don Anna is a good one to sing.
Yeah.
It shows a lot, and they do Don Giovanni a lot more frequently than they do Idomeneo.
Yeah.
Idomeneo has a bigger cast. They often have to get guests to sing to fill all of the parts, because they're all difficult, but the tenor particularly, and Elektra particularly. Yeah, so I would just attach myself to Tichina's train of thought and say, if bring everything that you can sing well, but get yourself as a persona. I am a useful person to you because I can sing Mozart and I can sing other things as well. You know, and because I think the days of the grand impresario who knew something about music and spotted talent, I think those days are over, because we've shifted much more to who's going to administer the money best for the city, particularly the German. We've much more as we count encounters, as opposed to artistic people leading the theaters in some cases, not in all, of course, you know. Mm-hmm. So just present yourself into whatever roles that you can be cast in, and particularly the ones that you could be cast in right now. Don't think in the future I'm going to be able to sing Elektra. So, you know, so don't put an Agamemnon, right? So do what you think that you can be cast as right now, that you're good for. You just looking at you, you'd be a wonderful Donana, or, you know, in all of those roles. So, okay.
I'm with you. I'm very tall, Luana. I'm 6'1" as well. So.
Oh, excellent! Yeah, well, don't let that deter you.
No, do you find it sometimes that the tenor isn't always tall enough for you?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I was so mad in Vienna. Was it Vienna? Yeah, in Vienna one time. Well, I'm sorry, Steve. We're almost out of time, but
that's okay. Anyway, we got a couple more. We have another question also.
Yeah, okay, but in Vienna one time they had a short soprano and a tall soprano, and they had a short tenor and a tall tenor. Did I get to sing with the tall tenor? No. They put the tall tenor with the short lady. You know, I mean, who does the casting, honestly?
This very quickly, this Diva chat is going to be more regular, and the next person who has a question is actually going to be doing the next Diva chat, and it's Elena Batman. And for people who don't know, Elena was on Broadway. And Luana, did you get to see the Phantom of the Opera when it was in Las Vegas?
Of course.
Well, Elena was the prima donna.
Oh my goodness, that's quite a sing. Yeah, that red hair wig and all. I admire that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Elena, you have a question.
Yes, very quick. Well, first of all, loved hearing your singing, loved hearing how lyrical you approach this. And as I'm teaching and I have students, and it's just, it's so nice to hear that reinforced, because that's what I'm trying to tell my students. You know, don't be overfaced by the title, oh, this is dramatic. You have to sing it very linearly and very lyrically. But my question is, oftentimes when I look at these postings, like for this opera course or whatever, well, pre-pandemic when we had auditions, is in terms of language, how important is it currently for singers to already be very good with German? I mean, I know, yes, we must learn the language, but, maybe they're ready and they know some German, but they haven't been immersed in it. I mean, how important is that? Because some of the job postings, like for opera chorus, even some of the smaller regional houses, it sounds like you really need to be conversant before you go.
Yeah, from what I know, it is appreciated if you are able to converse. But for example, here in Dresden, I came here in 2010, and I want to say about 4 years ago, before I left, they had started having English classes. You could learn to speak some English. There, I mean, like I say, obviously, the more the world becomes more global, I think if you, let's say it like this, if you come in with, kick-ass audition, and you're ready, and you sing your face off and knock their pants off, and they want you, because you can't say more than Guten Tag, I don't think you'll be refused. But if you come in and you're going nicht and ich and I don't care probably how good you are. you got to at least have a grip on it. I think, the coaches here there are people whose jobs it is to make sure that you're ready, So the fine tuning, I think they'd be ready to do, but I don't think they'd be willing to teach you German completely,
Yeah. When I did my audition tours, I did a lot of preparation. I went to the Goethe Institute, and they had a branch in San Francisco. I had a little computer program. I had bought my son an Atari 800, which is now a museum piece. And I had a German language course. So I took that, and it was kind of fun. So I think if your goal is to go to Germany on an audition tour, I agree that, if you're the next whatever, they probably will grab you. But it is for your own comfort in a foreign land. It's really good to there's so many opportunities to study German on the computer, and I would take the time to do that. Not because, also because if you can catch some mispronunciations that you might be singing, which would be important. But or if you have a dramatic voice, come to the American Wagner Project.
That's true. All right. Anybody else have any other questions? All right. Well, I want to thank. Go ahead, Tichina.
Hi.
Tichina, go ahead.
I was wondering, it was great to listen to your stories and your paths this afternoon. I was wondering, what is your process for learning Wagner? Do you start with understanding the storyline of your character first, then the text, or do you try to perfect the German text pronunciation right away?
That's a good question. That's a very good question.
Very, very good question. You take a score, you need to go to Wikipedia, look up the name of the opera, and you can read about it. There's a lot of information online so that you get a grasp of what it's about. Then you need to start working on the text, and you need to translate and translate and translate. And then you need to understand. It's helpful if you can diagram a sentence and you know which is the noun and which is the verb. And I think you shouldn't try to do it by yourself to get to that stage. Wagner's language is very archaic, and even in the times that he was writing in the 1800s, it was archaic language he was using. So it's very remote. You need to understand what you're saying, and learn. It depends on how your brain works too, because for some people learning notes is hard and words are easy. Other people it's the other way around. So you need to know yourself which way, and start with the hardest one first. Also start with the back of the score and work forward, because then if you get a chance to sing that role, by the time you get to the end, it'll be extremely familiar. But as a matter of fact, for my participants in the Wagner project this summer, I'm asking them to diagram the sentences in an aria, something not difficult like Einsam in trüben Tagen, for example, or Siegmund's aria, the short aria. So I think it's really good that you get to know the sense of the language that way. Right. And it's not easy, but that's a very good question. It takes time.
All right. Well, I want to thank my dear friend Tichina, because if it wasn't for Tichina, I have to say, we would not have Luana today. As Tichina definitely is the one who opened the door, and that is really a wonderful, wonderful thing. And this has been a lot of fun and very informative and interesting. And I want to thank everybody for coming, and I hope that you will come again to our next one, which will have Elena Batman, and talk about a little different, but careers in musical theater, and how she also balanced motherhood with that career. So that's very interesting. And so I look forward to seeing you. That's in June. We will send out, I don't have the date right on the top of my head right now, but we will send out the Zoom, all the notices, and hopefully you'll join us again. And again, Tichina, Luana, thank you so very much. And don't run. Let everybody else go. I want to just talk to you two alone for 1 second.
Oh, okay.
All right.
And
Thank you
hello
so
to Susan there. Hi, Susan.
Great.
much.
Bye,
Thank you
everybody.
all. Thank you all.
Bye.
Take
Thank
care
you.
now.